Connor Griffin just got paid and just got called up. So let's take a look and do a deep dive and see if we can find the next set of prospects who are on the verge of getting called up by their major league team. And if you like to win your fantasy baseball league, subscribe to this channel because we use data to help you win your fantasy baseball league and talk about lots of cool prospects on the way. The first prospect we're going to talk about is actually we're going to use a super cheat code. Usually when you look at these analysis, you got to look at player performance plus the fit with the team and their needs in the Major League Baseball level. But after Connor Griffin got paid, we have a couple other players who have also gotten contracts but have not been called up yet, which is just a sure sign that it's going to be very soon that they'll call him up, starting with Colt Emerson. So Colt Emerson just signed an 8-year, $95 million deal with the Seattle Mariners, and they hope that he can be the shortstop of the future for that team. He is 6 foot tall. He has scouting grades. It's really a hit over power tool right now. 65 hit tool on pipeline, 50 power, 50 run, 55 arm, overall field 55, overall 60. When you go to Fangraphs, a little bit lower, currently a 45 hit tool with upside of 60, and then game power 40 with upside of average 50, and raw power average to slight plus with 55, and then 50 speed. So I think with Colt Emerson, what we're looking at here is he's someone who, when he got drafted, there were debates whether he could stay at shortstop or if it had moved to like third base or something like that. The reports I'm seeing says he has been showing that he can stay at shortstop, which I think increases his value because he's a hit over power profile, but we hope that he will grow into some power as he comes up to the majors because he does have a great swing, and I was lucky enough to get to see him on my trip to spring training. You can see here, I think the best, most optimistic outlook for him initially is what we saw in 2025 overall in the minors. So if he can produce this, at the major league level, he was a 129 WRC plus. He had 16 home runs in 130 games. So I think you can hope for maybe 20-ish upside home runs if he comes up from a shortstop. That's not too bad. About 80 runs, 80 RBIs, and he had 14 steals in 130 games. So you have 15-ish steals, maybe a little bit more than that. If he comes up to the majors and produces that, then I think everyone would be super happy, especially if he stays at shortstop and can contribute that way. Let's be completely honest. While he's a fantastic prospect, that's probably not top 5 shortstop production right away. That's probably more like top 10, but certainly someone you want to have on your fantasy team and see if they can grow in the future. Some of the upside reasons why people like him is you can see is he consistently had a relatively high walk rate in the minors, and then relatively low strikeout rate as well. So, and I think he's going to do all this with a batting average and on-base percentage that you like. Probably not as high, maybe not the 285 and 383 on-base percentage he had, in last year and across AA and AAA. But I think they're definitely going to be a plus. So he's going to contribute for you in almost every category, just whether it's going to be average production or plus production. And coming from the shortstop position, I think that's someone you totally want to have on your fantasy baseball team. Now let's take a look at how he's doing so far in AAA this year in 2026, and that's when the numbers get a little bit shakier at the moment. You can see here he had the little shaky in his prospect savant data, and maybe that's why he hasn't been called up yet. They're waiting to see a bit more out of him. Surprisingly, compared to what I just mentioned a second ago, he currently has a high strikeout rate of 35% and a low walk rate, and he's actually chasing way too much, 43%. He's almost swinging too much. You can see his overall swing percentage is in the 98th percentile, meaning he swings at almost 62% of every pitch that comes his way, regardless if it's in the zone or not. That's probably the sign that he's pressing too much or swinging too much. And his in-zone swing percentage is 81%, so I guess you should be swinging at stuff in the zone. But his contact rate's below average at 77.5. So not off to a fantastic start this year, but he's shown enough certainly over the years to really show the Mariners that he's someone to invest in, and they've given him a long-term deal. So I think it's just a matter of time when he comes up, but I don't think I'll be looking to rush him up right now because you want to get him back to his stride of where he was finishing last year versus some of this year. So let's take a look inside his data as well here. You can see here the WRC plus is only 95, 758 OPS. His launch angle is only 7.6, Exit velocity is only 83.5, even though his hard hit rate is 41%, but the chase rate is so high. The whiff rate's so high. His expected batting average is 255, on base percentage only 282, slugging 421, and xwOBA 305, which is below average. When you look at how he's doing against certain pitch types, especially xwOBA, he's struggling against fastballs right now with a 157 xwOBA. And even the sliders and even changeups, he's really only hitting the sinkers and curves because he's struggling with sweepers too. So I think he's got, especially with these high whiff rates on those other pitches as well, he's got some work to do, really. I don't know if he's just pressing or what the case might be, but I think this is someone who you want to invest in, you want to take a look at, and to give you some confidence at least to where you think he can do. This is what he looked like in AAA for the short period of time he was in there last year, where you can see at the top half of this is really exceptional 93rd, 95th percentile stuff on his batting average, exit velocities, 50th percentile exit velocities, barrel rate, hard hit rates, and more average strikeout and walk rates. The chase rate was still high as well, so that's been something maybe he really still needs to work on. And his zone contact was probably slightly below average, but these are the things that people are looking for. So I think he's definitely going to get called up at some point here whenever they have the opportunity because he just got paid. However, I would give him a little bit more time to really work out the kinks in AAA before he gets called up. But if you're in a redraft league where people haven't been going that deep to prospects, you may want to pick him up and stash him if you got the opportunity on your rosters, because I think he is a name that we will be hearing a lot more of coming next year. Next player on our list is Cooper Pratt. Cooper Pratt shockingly got a contract extension as well. I know he's kind of an overall solid shortstop as well for the Milwaukee Brewers. However, he's ranked 10th, their current organization, but he got 8 years and $50 million. And people were kind of surprised because they've got Jesus Mate and stuff like that, and even Luis Pena above him on the kind of the depth chart for the middle infield spots, but he was the one that got paid, so maybe they think he is the most ready to come contribute with the team from AAA. By pipeline, he's got a 50 hit tool, 45 power, 50 run, 60 arm, 60 field, and overall 55. So I think this is unlike Colt Emerson, who I think is an offensive forward shortstop. Cooper Pratt is more one of those. I think he's going to be more valuable as a real life baseball player for the Brewers than probably in fantasy, because he does derive a lot of his value from his fielding, solid fielding, great arm and stuff like that. And obviously his tools look a little bit more average across the board, which you can still get decent production, especially for a shortstop from that. And he's 6'4", so I think there's opportunities for him to grow into his profile a bit more. Fangraphs is a little bit lower on him, hit tool 40 to 45, game power 30 to 40, raw power 45 to 50, and then average speed. So I think this is someone who certainly all around average good guy. He probably might be more of that second shortstop or that middle infield position if you have that as well. I think he's going to be well outside of the top 10, maybe top 15 for shortstops especially once he comes up and gets established. Let's see what he did in 2025 and mostly AA. He played 120 games as a 20-year-old at AA. He only had 8 home runs, 60 to 70 runs and RBIs, but 31 stolen bases. So he showed a lot of speed in the minors. The question is going to be how easily will that translate to the major leagues. Is it just going to be average speed, or will he have a potential to get above average 20, 30 stolen bases? Again, kind of like Colt Emerson, good discipline, high walk rate, and low strikeout rate. He got a little unlucky with his BABIP last year. That seems to be a little bit low, and that's why he only hit 238, but had a good walk rate for a 343 on base percentage for a WRC plus of 107. So far this year in AAA, as age 21, through only just 4 games, of course, so a small sample size, but he is not doing well. He has a 250 average, 250 on base percentage, 250 slugging, 235 weighted on base average for only a 28 WRC plus. So I think even though he just got paid, which probably signals they're willing to invest in him as well, he'll be with the Brewers till 2033, barring any trades. But I'm probably less high on him from a fantasy perspective rather than just a real life Major League Baseball player who can help the Brewers out. I don't think this is someone that you need to go and jump out and stash right now, even though his name is getting a lot of buzz. And then obviously being 6'4" and showing that he can stay at shortstop will get a little bit of buzz, and maybe he can grow into a little more power. But right now it is definitely it's not even a hit over power tool. It's a defensive value over hit tool or offensive tools altogether, which can be valuable for the Mariners they wanted to get into. But this is a profile that's, I think, a bit trickier. And let's take a look at his StatCast data. You'll see that in here as well. So he is, really cold right now. We talked about that before, and he didn't have any AAA stats that I could pull up from the year before to compare to, but everything's really low, bottom 10 percentile, exit velocities, barrel rate, hard hit rates, decent strikeout rate, but low walk rate. Again, probably too high of a chase rate. His contact rate's about average, but he does have some speed at the end of this. So I think Cooper Pratt is an exciting overall player, but from fantasy perspective, I really think you want a more higher upside prospect. Like if you could get a Colt Emerson versus Cooper Pratt for sure, but Cooper Pratt's probably a name that you're going to hear from the Brewers for a while, and they have a pretty deep infield depth in their minor league, so it'll be interesting to see if they eventually make some trades. So maybe there's a scenario where they did, sign Cooper Pratt to this contract. I'll have to see if he had any, no trade clauses in that. But maybe he's a trade candidate now because they got to make some room for the other players in the middle infield by having him on a kind of team-friendly contract. Maybe they think that'll increase his trade value with other teams if they can get a young, controllable, and relatively low-cost player for $50 million for the next 8 years. If you are not a small market team like the Brewers. Next player, which is actually a subscriber request to take a look at, which is Sam Antonacci from the Chicago White Sox. And I actually got a chance to see him during spring training when he was with Team Italy. He certainly made a name for, honestly, I have to be completely honest, he was not on my prospect radar at all. I didn't even recognize the name when I first saw him with Team Italy, and then started to dig in and look at his background with the White Sox. And then obviously he had a fantastic run through the World Baseball Classic, reaching the semifinals with Team Italy and having, I think it was one of the best. Was he the one that had the decoy out in the center field that faked someone out and got really had almost cost them a run with his defensive skills? But Sam Antonacci, his hit tool on pipeline is a 55, power's only a 35, runs only a 45, and then average arm and fielding, so overall slightly below average what they give him. It's interesting, you don't usually see this. Fangraphs is usually a lot lower on all the tool grades, but they give him a 60 hit tool and they say he's already there at the 60 hit tool. Game power 30-35, raw power 40-45, average speed, and then slightly below average fielding. So this is a rare situation where Fangraphs is higher than pipeline for at least one tool, the hit tool. And you can see in 2025 overall spent some time at high A and double A, and overall only had 5 home runs in 116 games, 78 runs to 57 RBIs, but 48 stolen bases overall, with a high walk rate, a low strikeout rate, low ISO at 118. You'd like to see your ISO kind of getting closer to 200, especially for power hitters. But he translated into a 156 WRC plus last year, and then he's off to a 193 WRC plus this year in AAA, and we'll show some of his StatCast here in a minute. But I do believe, looking at this type of profile, he is also, he is a gamer. Everything I have heard or read about him says that he is probably the type of player that managers love to have on the team, and his baseball IQ is so high, as shown by some of the plays and moves that he made in the World Baseball Classic. But I think this is another one where his real world value is probably going to be higher than his fantasy value, because let's take a look at this. He might be a perfect prototypical leadoff hitter, in which case that means, if he doesn't have power, his power is only a 35, he might contribute significantly to runs from the leadoff spot. And let's say he does get a fair amount of stolen bases, but that really is only like a 2 category contributor. If you assume maybe he only ends up being about average batting average and on base percentage, maybe you're saying he can get a little bit higher than that based on what he's showing with his hit tool in the minors. but I think you will probably struggle with him with RBIs and home runs, those kind of power categories from someone who's kind of second base, third base. He probably profiles much better overall as a second baseman when he comes up to the majors, because I think you might be able to get away with a little bit less power from there, especially if he has a leadoff hitter that can get you some runs and stolen bases. But overall, I think this is a true baseball player versus real world versus fantasy type of value. But I know a lot of people are very high on him. Let's take a look at his current StatCast data so far in 2026, and it is fantastic. Look at all these 95th percentile things on expected batting average, slugging percentage. His average exit velocity is down a little bit. Max exit velocity is 50th percentile, at least above average. Hard hit rates, at least average right now. And then his strikeout rate relatively low, walk rate's low, and chase rate. This is really what you want to see in a chase rate from a prospect coming up. For only a 14% chase rate shows he has good plate discipline, and probably won't get exposed by Major League pitching as easily. His transition will probably be a little bit easier than the previous two prospects I showed, even if they have higher ceiling, especially Colt Emerson. But his chase rate is too high that he looks like a risky profile for a transition to the majors right now. And you can see his zone contact 90 percentile with a 93%. So he is a high contact hitter, can get you runs and RBIs. Right now, for only 30 plate appearances in AAA, he's batting .367. He does have 2 home runs, and I thought I heard he hit another one just recently. I'll have to look that up. But he's rocking a 193 WRC plus. We look at his crazy 21% walk rate, only 9% K rate. Yeah, that looks backwards almost between what you'd expect from a decent walk and strikeout rate. His launch angle is only 5 degrees, so that's probably why he's not hitting the ball as his hard hit rate is almost 35%. But that's with that kind of launch angle, he's not getting the ball in the air, so the potential for barrels and hard and home runs is a lot lower. Although he does have 2 barrels on this season so far. And then let's look how he's doing versus pitching. He's doing fine on 4-seam fastballs from an ex-Woba. Sinkers, a little bit of trouble with a 277 with no hard hit rate off of them. Then doing great on cutters and sliders. And then just not seeing a whole lot of change-ups, curves, or splitters. So I think it looks pretty solid, especially promising seeing the 4-seam fastball type of data. So this is someone I think you could look at maybe if you do need some second base depth, but I really do feel like this is a 2 category, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you get average or on base percentage profile, and you're going to be really below average currently in home runs and RBIs at the time that he comes up. Maybe that's something you can live with as a second baseman if he does get you the stolen bases, but that's kind of what I see for him as of right now. Going to our next prospect, this is James Tibbs III, and there is probably almost no hotter player in fantasy baseball right now, at least in the minors, than James Tibbs III. The sad truth for him is he's with the Dodgers. He might be fully blocked. He might be like Michael Busch all over again, just floundering in the minors. There's a scenario where with such a hot start that he's had, almost for any other Major League Baseball team, he might be called up already if they have any needs or rooms, but I'm not sure. We'll see what happens with the Dodgers because they've got a pretty stacked lineup at the major leagues, and barring any kind of significant rash of injuries, he might be stuck in AAA without it. What's interesting for Tibbs overall is that even though he was drafted in the first round, picked 13th overall by the San Francisco Giants, his power tool has been kind of a question. Right now, the pipeline has him as a 50 hit tool, 50 power, 40 run, 50 arm, 45 feel, and 50 overall. Kind of a very overall average profile, especially for someone who's 5'11", 200. That kind of makes sense. But that seems to be a little more of an average profile for someone who drafted so high in the first round. Fangraphs has him a little bit lower, of course. 35 to 45 hit tool, 35 to 50 game power, 55 raw power, 50 speed. And so he is the type of player that, I think before this hot start this year, people were looking at him as like, oh, maybe he's a 4th outfielder, or is he going to be a quad A guy? And that's possibly why he got dealt quite a bit. He's on his 3rd team already. drafted by the Giants. He was involved, traded to my Boston Red Sox, and part of the Rafael Devers deal. And then shockingly, I guess the Red Sox didn't need any more outfielders because they had such a log jam as well. But we traded him for a rental of Dustin May from the Dodgers, and that didn't work out for us. But it looks like the Dodgers have been able to turn him into something else, because throughout all of last year, you could see he had a decent year, 127 weighted WRC plus. His batting average was 243, good walk rate, so his on base percentage was 373, relatively low 429 slugging percentage, and a good 371 weighted on base average. But that came with decent 20 home runs, 82 runs, 71 RBIs, 10 stolen bases. But now, so far this year in 2026, he's hit a whole nother gear. I know it's only 10 games, but he has 7 home runs. And in spring training, I didn't pull up his spring training data, he had another 4 in spring training. So in 2026, he's already hit 11 home runs. So either he's found another gear, or the Dodgers have unlocked something about his swing to really help him out. We'll look at the StatCast data. I think his launch angle is significantly better than all the hitters I've been showing you before, but I have not seen this before in a long time. Obviously, it's early in the season, it won't last, but it's so rare to see a 311 WRC plus. He is 3 times better than the average player right now by hitting 7 home runs in just 10 games. And in a monstrous 439 batting average, 511 on base percentage, almost 1100 slugging, and a weighted on-base average of 672, which is absolutely insane. So that's why he is the hottest player right now, but there's nowhere for him to go because he's completely blocked in that Dodgers organization unless there's some kind of injury. But let's take a look at the StatCast data and see if we believe this, because he is certainly hitting above his weight and what we expected from him. But now in his StatCast data, it is all legit. He's in the 99th percentile for weighted on base average, batting average, slugging percentage, exit velocity, max exit velocity, 50th percentile exit velocity, all that kind of stuff. And everything looks super solid. Barrel rate, hard hit rate, with an average strikeout rate. He could walk a bit more, but close to average walk rate. And again, he's not chasing too much, only 21% chase rate. So all these things are super solid for not only his discipline by not chasing and being average walk and strikeout rates, and all this upside with the power that he's shown right now. And then usually when you see some of these things on the swings, doesn't concern me, because it just means he's being very patient. So his swing rate's only 42%, which is 34th percentile, and even lower in 63 percentile in the strike zone. So I think he's really picking and waiting on to find his pitches, which shows you that he does have a good eye. His contact in the zone is a little bit low at only 70%. It's not hurting him right now, but maybe that's something to watch as he continues to grow through AAA, and see if he can make adjustments to that, because